the planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is Belinda Waymouth. Hi, Belinda. Belinda is an eco-journalist, has oftentimes good news that we didn't necessarily become aware of. But sometimes she has a reality check. And I don't know which way she's going today. I think maybe a little reality check and maybe a little good news.
You've got it. You've got it in one.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a reality check, and then we're going to go to some good news. You know how I like to finish on an upbeat note. That's my brand, Mark. That's what I'm all about.
Oh, okay.
We do have to talk about what happened last week at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, this is just really, or last month. This is really nuts.
Yeah, it just happened. But you're right. Just like a week ago, for the big Mar-a-Lago party, that it was a fundraiser, and Trump essentially said to the fossil fuel CEOs, "Give me $1 billion, and I'll give you everything you want."
Yep, that's it in a nutshell. Yeah, you invited them down there. You know, the usual players, the guys we know: Chevron, Exxon, Occidental Petroleum, all the big players, 20 or so of them. And yeah, he said, this is what I'll give you. You'll be able to do your LNG, the liquefied natural gas, those depots. Yes, you can do those. Yes, I'll open up the Arctic. Yes, I'll get rid of all of Biden's regulations. Yes, I'll open up auctions for drilling rights in the Gulf of Mexico. And he bragged that the $1 billion, the quid pro quo, the $1 billion they'd given back, that would be a deal because they would save so much money in costs. And I mean, it's so flagrant. I mean, what is he saying? That American energy and American policy is totally up for sale? I mean, it's so it's brazen. I mean, we know what campaign finance, like sort of how unethical that is. You bankroll my campaign, I get in, I reward you. But this was this took it to a whole nother level.
I have a quick question about liquid natural gas, because when I reported the story, which was, as I said, like a week ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, this meeting, I got this in the chat, and I kind of put it to the side to have you handle it. The liquid natural gas, I got, what's so bad about liquid natural gas? Isn't that the best, cleanest form of energy, this natural gas? Can you speak to, you've touched on it before, but I wonder if you can speak to it again, please.
Yeah. The problem with liquefied natural gas is it's natural gas. Well, we call it, the industry started calling it natural to make it sound good, but this is methane and ethane, guys. And so we have an absolute glut of this because of all the fracking. And what happened with Biden, and this was a big sort of moment, is that we already have these huge depots. We have them in Mississippi. We have them in Texas, because we're going to be exporting all this liquefied natural gas, to Europe. I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine, and, people don't want to, buy things from Russia. And that was seen as this windfall for American natural gas. And we're already exporting it. But natural gas methane is, over its lifetime, when it first goes into the atmosphere, for the first 25 years of its life, it's 100 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, as a planetary warmer. We've got this blanket of greenhouse gases sitting up in the atmosphere, just making the planet get hotter and hotter. And methane is a real baddie. And the fact is,
say it again. It's how many times more?
Well, when it first goes up, it's 100 times more powerful as a heater-upper of the planet than CO2 over its entire lifetime. Because, all these chemicals, they only last for so long. It ends up being 25 times stronger. That's huge. And we have methane coming out of the melting permafrost right now. We have methane being, coming out of landfills. We have it coming out of, drilling operations. It's those big, when you see a big refinery and you see those, flames going up, that's when they're burning off the natural gas that's coming out of the pipes. So no, this is not, the clean energy is solar and wind. solar, wind, and geothermal. It's wind, water, and that's it. It's
so on the list of damaging CO2 fossil fuels, LNG is not better or is better than, I mean, it sounds like it's horrible. I mean, 25 times is an insane number.
Yeah,
and you're saying it starts 100 times, then it gets to 25 times over the course of its life. Oh, but can you, I mean, on the breadth of damage, which one is the worst? And then I assume coal is the worst?
Coal is absolutely the worst because of all the particulate matter. And what happened is when we learned about particulate, and that's, they're tiny, microns, they're thinner than a strand of hair. Their particulate matter is minuscule, but the damage that it causes, asthma in children and respiratory illnesses in adults, and how bad it is for us and that we're breathing this in. I mean, they came up with this really interesting thing saying trees are great, but if you live on a street where there's a lot of traffic, have a hedge, because the hedge is low and it will be a barrier to the fumes coming out of a car. You've got benzene coming out of tailpipes, you've got benzene coming out of oil refineries, a known carcinogen. But particulate matter, so coal's the worst, then fossil fuels, burning our liquid gas, and then natural gas comes after those. And it was seen as this real, when Obama was president, he was all about fracking, and they were calling it this bridge to renewables. Natural gas is better than coal because the benefit of a natural gas power plant, generating electricity, you can turn it off and on. It's very responsive. Whereas coal has to burn all the time. You can't turn a coal-fired power plant off, when everyone's asleep and they're not using electricity, and then back on again. So natural gas, or methane, ethane, got billed as this bridge to renewables, and it definitely has. I mean, we're not going to do this on renewables only just yet. And we know that. We talked about that this last week. The world is at, over 30% of renewables are generating our electricity needs right now. So we're on the way. The revolution is happening. But the other thing with natural gas is, the fracking and the chemicals that it uses, Mark, and the damage that it does to our water supplies, and the fact that the people were allowed to frack and not disclose what chemicals they were using to get that. When you go in and frack, you're after the more difficult to deal with deposits. So you've got more bedrock to get through. So you're using more chemicals with water. It's pressure and it's chemicals to dissolve the rocks. And then the other thing that happened was that, it changed the water table. And so people were having seismic shifts where a lot of fracking was going on. You were changing the level of the terrain where people, lived in their homes, so there was that damage as well.
Yeah,
so,
it's interesting, too, that when it comes to fracking, there is total protection for these companies that do fracking as to revealing the actual chemicals they use to fire into these spaces way beneath the ground to break out the energy. So it's a lot of water, as you say,
Yes.
high pressure powered water, but that water is in this mix of chemicals. And those chemicals, and you've also, I think, suggested it in the last minute or so, contaminate potentially any number of things, from water sources that are under the surface to soil above the surface as that water is pulled out. Now that chemically treated water. So fracking's got a lot of issues too. I mean, clearly it's all a dirty business. So, but it's interesting because we do get comments about this every time we talk about it. So I did want to get it clear. Now back to your point. Now, if we go back to those promises that Trump has made to the fossil fuel companies, where does that leave us? So he'll undo all of these various regulations that are getting us on the way to cleaner energy. And now he's making this deal with the CEOs on these fossil fuel companies. And where does that leave us?
Well, the other thing that got revealed last week is that these fossil fuel companies, they are writing right now these executive orders that Trump, if he, did win, which, I don't think is going to happen, but that's just, my opinion, that he would sign these executive orders the minute he got into office, and they increase oil drilling, gas drilling, taking away regulations, but they're being written by the fossil fuel industry for themselves and their profits. So, of course, what's great is we know this has happened, and we sort of know the level of this, sort of brazen. I mean, it's corrupt. It's basically saying that our policy and our energy is up for sale. If you give me, campaign contributions, I give you, a free pass to pollute, to, keep us on the path of, increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So already we've had the Senate oversight, Democrats from the Senate Oversight Committee have jumped in to investigate. And we've also got the Senate Budget Committee have also said, well, of course, we're going to investigate too. And I just have to talk about the chair of this committee because I'm a huge fan, Sheldon Whitehouse. He is he's a senator from Rhode Island, and he's a huge.
He's the greatest.
He's unbelievable. This is a man who, during a 9-year span from 2012 to 2021, he made 279 speeches. He did it weekly from the Senate floor, whenever the Senate was in session. Time to wake up speeches, they're called. I actually tweeted them to you and our listeners.
Yes, I'm just retweeting it right now. It's
funny
you say that.
Yeah, because this guy, I mean, he's so, he's indefatigable in his fight against, climate change and corruption. And it was, in fact, interestingly, last month, it was a joint investigation by these two very committees, the Oversight and the Senate Budget Committee, that uncovered, fossil fuels, fossil fuel companies just brazen, this use of dark money and years that they have been obfuscating the truth about climate change, lobbying to get any kind of climate law not enacted, any kind of regulatory policy thrown out. And in his speech, he really joins all the dots between what the fossil fuel company has done as far as, the Chamber of Commerce and the Association of Manufacturers, and how they came out so strongly, against anything to do with climate change. He's a huge champion for the ocean and what climate change is doing to the ocean. In fact, his wife, I've spoken on a panel with her about ocean health, and she works for the Ocean Conservancy, or did at the time. But the fact that he has, made these speeches. Now, what's interesting is that in January 2021, he made his last of these weekly speeches, number 279, and he said, I am going to, my little pilot light that I, light every week on the Senate floor about climate change. I can turn that off now because Biden is here, and Biden is going to be very tough for the environment, and Biden has been, and that was when Senator Whitehouse, Sheldon Whitehouse said, I can, hang up my, my weekly speech. But if listeners are interested, go on and read it, because he really, he very clearly takes you through the sort of process and what fossil fuel companies are doing, and the sort of extent of their nefariousness is really, really front and center right now. I mean, this should be all over the paper right now, rather than this trial that's going on in New York, because this is our health. This is the planet. This is what Trump is selling, to these guys. Yeah,
White House is so good at tracing the connection between dark money and money generally, political money, and the kind of legislation that you're talking about. And he does it with the Supreme Court and also other justice appointments. And he does it with this, with the way that the fossil fuel industry has captured the legislative bodies in America.
Yeah, and he's been nonstop. He has been traveling the U.S., going to every state and to states that seem pro fossil fuels. He goes to the universities and he says, look, in the universities, they're teaching climate change and that it is this huge existential threat that's facing us, but we have these elected officials who, because they're allowed to accept all this money and fossil fuel companies have all this money, they're very warped once they get into office, and they're putting fossil fuel interests ahead of the interests of their constituents, of us,
It's true, and it is not at all uncommon. It might be thought of this way, but it's not uncommon to have lobbyists with a lot of power and attorneys that represent huge lobbies like the fossil fuel lobby write legislation or even write executive orders. But what is extraordinary is to have a presidential candidate unapologetically say this quiet part out loud, which is essentially, give me all this money and then you write the executive orders and I'll sign them. I don't care even what's in them. We know that that's Trump's style, That is, he doesn't care. He's about himself and he's about turning his existing wealth into greater wealth, which he can do, at the foot of the American taxpayer. But to have him unapologetically state it this way, it's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And I hope you're right that he doesn't win, but, it's going to be close because of the way we do elections in this country. Now give me some good news.
Okay, now for the good news. I don't know. So Kim told me about this one. It's fantastic. So in San Francisco, they are looking at, banning forever chemicals, the PFAS, the ones that never go away that we talked about a few weeks ago when Biden said, hey, no more PFAS in the drinking water of the American public. This is not okay. And San Francisco is saying, hey, we can't have PFAS in the firefighting gear that our men and women who so bravely, are fighting fires. I mean, do you know that the World Health Organization has actually categorized the job of firefighter as a carcinogenic job? Because, when you run into a blaze, there are so many chemicals that you're dealing with in a house, all the burning plastic, asbestos, all of this stuff. But the fact that you're wearing clothing. Now, PFAS is heat and flame resistant, so that's why people are wearing it. But we know it's linked to infant mortality, low birth weights, developmental disorders, cancer, cholesterol. It's so bad. PFAS are so bad, these forever chemicals. And as the guy who has written the bill for the city of San Francisco said, look, the costs of changing the uniforms of our firefighters that's minimal in comparison to the human costs, the healthcare costs, the settlement costs. And there's one San Francisco firefighter, a female lieutenant, who's been with the San Francisco Fire Department for 26 years. She's had 2 lots of cancer. She's had a double mastectomy. She's had radiation. And this just, we just have to stop it. And we've got 11 San Francisco firefighters right now testing out different materials in their, the jackets and the pants and the gloves and the, everything that they wear to see, how well they do, on the job. And I just think, you have one, department that does this, and then other departments obviously will follow suit. Because when you read about the illnesses that firefighters, get from years of being, a firefighter, it's just not okay. These guys, these men and women are heroes. And also with climate change and increased fire, they're going to be even more important. And so we really need to take care of them.
It's such an interesting world in which they operate because they're doing so much good, and yet they're exposed to all of these things that are so very toxic. And even those fires that take place in the brush and forestry around California and elsewhere, but just because we're in California, there is a release of natural chemicals in all of that. I mean, in other words, there's a toxicity to just that burning, just the burning of wood. So, it's wild that we would, put these firefighters. I mean, you stated perfectly, I guess, when you say, yeah, the idea is that this stuff is fire resistant. It's a fire retardant and it's fire resistant. I guess that's why it exists. I mean, and that's why they wear it. But it's.
But now we know better. The fact is, now we know better.
And San Francisco, give them credit. Yeah, I mean, here's a city that's falling down in a lot of places, but give them credit for no more of that in the stuff that they'll be wearing. You know.
Yeah. It's big. It's big.
Do I have anything else for Belinda before we say goodbye? I think that's it. I have a couple of comments, but they're related to politics. I'll take them after you're done.
Okay. I've got one other good news thing, but we can do that next week because it will need a little more time. And it's
okay. We'll let it breathe next week. Until then, let people interact with you on social media. You can find her across social media at Belinda Waymouth, WAYMOUTH. Thank you, Belinda. And that's It's the Planet Stupid for today.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No. It's the Planet Stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.